wore my villain mustache for just this purpose.
That's why you didn't shave
Massachusetts
today.
Senate approves bill to study psychedelic therapy for military veterans. That's good news. Massachusetts Senate has approved a bill focused on military veterans that includes provisions to create a psychedelics working group, study and make recommendations about the potential therapeutic benefits of substances like psilocybin and MDA. I swear I don't stutter, you guys. About a month after the House approved its version of the legislation based on a proposal initially introduced by Governor Maura Healey, Senate unanimously approved an amended version of a separate House measure. The two chambers must now reconcile these bills before their final version goes to the governor's desk. Honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans, HERO Act, is a wide-ranging proposal focused on veterans that has cleared both chambers in different forms with the psychedelics policy reform provisions attached. The House version was also amended earlier to include a section that would create a pilot program to examine medical cannabis as an opioid alternative for veterans. Psychedelics measures wouldn't immediately create a framework for legal access, but would require Executive Office of Veteran Services to convene a working group to study alternative therapies for veterans. The panel would need to evaluate literature, research trials, and expert opinion, determine if psychedelic therapy is associated with improved outcomes regarding mental health treatment for veterans. And it would be required to issue recommendations regarding the provision of psychedelic therapy to treat veterans with mental health disorders in the state of Massachusetts. Today, we reaffirmed our commitment here in Massachusetts to protect, empower, and support those who have sacrificed for our nation and return home, Senator Adam Gomez said. By increasing their health care and mental health benefits, promoting businesses to hire veterans, and expanding support service for active veterans and their families, start to make inroads on issues that have a direct impact on the lives of our service members, benefiting them and families. Passage of the HERO Act comes after a Massachusetts Joint Legislative Committee advised the legislature not to pass a broader psychedelics legalization. Activists are in the process of collecting additional signatures to put that back on the ballot. Lawmakers were required to consider the psychedelics measure after the state certified advocates had submitted enough valid signatures in an initial petitioning year. Last month, Special Joint Committee on Ballot Initiatives issued a majority report that formally recommended against passing the measures drafted. Campaign first filed two different psychedelics reform initiatives in August, and after the state attorney general determined that they both met the constitutional requirement for ballot placement, activists decided to pursue the version that included a home cultivation option. 8 cities across Massachusetts have enacted policies to locally deprioritize law enforcement against psychedelics. And meanwhile, a different Massachusetts legislative committee has advanced a bill in February that would legalize psilocybin therapy in the Commonwealth and set up a framework to license facilitators who would supervise medical, therapeutic, and spiritual applications of the drug. So, all in all, these bills are good news, and there's a lot of good movement coming from Massachusetts. I just have a quick editorial commentary on all of this, and it's really fitting in most of the news brought forth today on today's show, as well as Jamie's share. We need to really caution against using psychedelics and cannabis as another tool to continue to push forward and propel these expeditionary wars of U.S. and Western European corporate global hegemony. What does that mean? It means corporate control of the resources of this planet. A really dark act of sorcery took place on September 11th, 2001. If anybody can remember before that, the American public was anti-war. We didn't support our troops going over on these expeditionary wars, and the CIA and special forces had to do it really under the cover of darkness because the American people weren't supporting it. The moment people, Osama bin Laden and his crew, who were funded and trained by George Bush Sr. as the Mujahideen in Afghanistan fighting against the Soviet Union in a false Cold War that was propelled and the money loaned on by bankers on both sides, for the purpose of continuing the military-industrial prison complex's control of the planet Earth, right? The moment those guys flew those planes into those towers, all of a sudden, we have to thank the troops. We have to respect the troops. I would say we have not been thanking or respecting the troops by sending them illegal expeditionary wars to murder and assassinate people in order for control of their resources. That's not a way to respect somebody. And just saying thank you to someone after you've basically sent them somewhere to murder innocent people and given them a life of being haunted by demons in their dreams of these people that they have murdered and in some cases tortured. That's not a way to thank or respect anybody. So I think we need to take these blinders off. We need to stop just repeating things that we hear in the news media and take a look at what is actually happening. As Yarrow said, the last war that you could even talk about being slightly just would be the U.S.'s entry into World War II. And we murdered millions of Japanese people we didn't need to murder. The Japanese already wanted to surrender. We wanted to drop nuclear bombs on them to impress Europe and the Soviet Union and basically show everybody that we were the big dog on the planet. And so since then, all we've been involved in are expeditionary wars of the CIA and corporate, basically U.S., French, and British corporate energy company interests. Wars in Nicaragua where we funded right-wing fascists. Paramilitary death squads and torture squads, assassination of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran because he wanted to nationalize oil, institution of the Shah, who was the king, and the funding of the Savak, which is the Iranian secret police, and the training by U.S. Special Forces of the Savak how to rape the Iranian populace with German shepherds. Yes, that really happened, and you can see it from Freedom of Information Acts. Vietnam War, which was a cover for Air America's smuggling of heroin to Afghanistan. The invasion of Afghanistan, which was another cover. Notice the Taliban had almost completely eliminated the heroin trade, the opium poppy trade. The moment we came in there, and you can go back and Google right now, and you can see NBC, Fox News, and MSN reports of American troops guarding poppy fields because we needed these people as our allies in this war that we basically manufactured with the CIA. And then as soon as America gets in, opium poppy trade is now 4 times as big as it ever was under the Taliban or before. What we need to do, and it's okay if you hate me, I'm totally cool with it. I'm going to continue to sound this alarm. Sending our best and brightest overseas murder people who don't even care or know about us, who live in thatched roof wooden buildings and mud huts, who have no ability to get to America to harm us, so that we can continue to control their oil, to control their lithium, to control their cobalt, to control how they apportion their resources for their people. Instead of thanking our soldiers for going over and murdering those people, let's thank our soldiers by keeping them at home to create food forests in American cities, to help and heal and shepherd the homeless, to build low-cost housing for the people that are building shanty towns that used to be called Hoovervilles in the Great Depressions, rebuild the bridges, to rebuild the roads, to do actual good things for America and then the world. And we start thanking our service members by not asking them unjustly murder people around the world, and by actually respecting them and helping them to live a good and wholesome life. Let's not use psychedelics as a patch or a spackle for the current corporate slave model we have in the U.S. that's driving everybody to bankruptcy and for these endless wars. Let's use psychedelics, wake up the fact that we are a human family, and only when we all have a seat at the table will anything be able to be fixed. Let's use psychedelics to grow our intelligence. Let's use psychedelics to grow our compassion. Let's begin to reject fear, embrace love, grab one another by the hand, and create a new future on this earth together as the human family that we are. Jason and Yarrow, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Man, Mathieu St, Germain, I feel like you took all the words out of my mouth.
Off the top rope. I'm sure the chat is full of people who are like, fuck that commie. What can I say?
Oh, man.
I'm all for love. I'm all against war.
I'm all for love, and you know you do bring up some super interesting points that I think a lot of people kind of tend to forget because we've been in this. You are right. There was a mass feeling across the country totally against war. Like I remember, like when we went to the Iraq war, there was people out there protesting. No blood for oil was like the big protest sign back then during that time. I mean, I remember they were marching and they even closed down the Bay Bridge for like a day or something for a period of time. They were all so angry about this. But you were so right. 9/11 changed everything as far as everyone's thought process and perspective, and you know the world did change that day. You're 100% right about that, Mathieu St. Germain.
But the crazy thing is that even though most people realize 9/11 was some sort of CIA operation, immediately just absorb the next lesson, which is support the troops, send them everywhere to murder people who believe in Islam. And while I have a problem with all Abrahamic religions and really want to see their eventual dissolution through the evolution of human consciousness, I do not support us going and again, murdering anybody. But what I would like to say is I also support the troops in their role as human beings. I think the majority of people who were sent overseas to murder people for America were gamed upon by that same corporate military interest. They were put in situations where they had no other options. Most of them weren't educated by our failing school systems in such a way that they didn't even know what they were doing. And to them, the military was a way out of their hometown, was a way for money for college. I think those people were taken advantage of. So if you have served in the military, do not bear you ill will. I am in solidarity with you, but I beg for you to tell people what happened to you, that more people do not enlist. We can just reorganize this country. I, for one, would like to see America go back to a pre-World War I, somewhat isolationist model where we focus on our own country, our own citizens. And once we have a healthy and intelligent citizen base, and a clean country wherein people are working together to improve our lot in life, we could then scale that up and we could begin sharing that with the world instead of just sharing laser-guided Tomahawk missiles. People don't even know where America is. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday, right? Yarrow, you have anything you want to say on this? Go for it.
Yeah, I do, which is I like that veterans tend to be the group that is the recipient first of experimental medical treatment modalities. And I think it's important that all people recognize the difference between military policy versus military personnel. And I think we need to also understand the difference in the way that we express our patriotism. My hope is that we can support anybody who chooses to serve, because I still think there is nobility in a career path of civil service, while also understanding that it is equally, if not more, patriotic to criticize our government's policies in the way that they choose to use and deploy our military personnel. And so I think that if we really want to support our troops, we don't just randomly thank that stranger for their service when we see them in uniform in an airport, but we advocate for greater benefits for those people when they get back, more career training, transition support, a better functioning VA, the ability for people to access cannabis through the VA, and that those of you out there who have the opportunity to hire people also consider people who've served as a plus in who you have join your team. I have always done that. Even when we were renegades growing cannabis, I did find that people who had some of those skills that they gained through the training that they had, that the government paid for, was beneficial in my business and in our endeavors. So I love that we're doing this type of research. I still think that we're just nibbling around the edges. I still think that war creates broken people who need a lot of assistance in healing their hearts and minds. And we're just now beginning to understand that. In World War II, they had a different name for PTSD. World War I, rather, it was like, they called it like
shell shock.
Shell shock. Thank you. And so we've known for 100 years that when people come back from these really traumatic experiences, that they are not the same. And so let's just remember that when we support people for their service, we support people for their service in the way that we demand our tax dollars be allocated. And so any research that helps that category of people, I think, is worth supporting. And I don't think it's a partisan issue.
So, Yarrow, I'd like to just push back and say that if you are supporting people who are going and murdering innocent people overseas, you are a de facto supporter of murder, and that would make you an accessory to murder. And if you could please present to me one of these wars, either one that we know about on the news, or one like Syria, where our special forces are involved daily in the murder, torture, and kidnapping of people. If you could find one of these and explain how it has furthered the interest and the safety of America, I would be interested and willing to listen. However, if I support someone go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, or as an advisor in Ukraine or Africa, murder people I've never met, the continued corporate control of resources, how is that a moral or ethical act? I would say the way we support the troops is by asking them, as you did, to claim conscientious objector status, stop taking part in murder of innocents. The power of the U.S. and British global financial system. That is what is happening. Popular opinion, I know.
Yeah, but look, I mean, and I'm gonna answer that, but probably in a way that doesn't make you happy, which is to just point out that the military, our armed services do a lot more than just that. And so if there's a humanitarian crisis, you tend to see people in camouflage assisting, no matter where the border is and no matter what country just got decimated by a hurricane. If there's a massive virus outbreak in some country in Africa that you only learned about in high school geography, it's not uncommon to see the military rise to those occasions. So there are great things that have been done with this massive tool, this instrument that has been stood up. And so it's not to justify the wrongs, but I think it would be not a complete picture to not also point out the successes we've had as a result of the training, the material, and the equipment that our armed forces represents and is. It's a humongous tool. And so when there are crises, our country has sent those people to respond to those crises without care for borders and boundaries and petrochemical interests. And so I'm never going to justify the landmines. I'm never going to justify the napalm. I'm never going to justify the things that we all know are happening and that U.S. citizens are participating and a part of those problems. I just don't know that that's all that gets done. And there is an argument that having a standing army in a world where we can't count on the benevolent intentions of every other country's leader. We've got 200 countries or something in the world. There is an argument that a standing army is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
So if I've got a club, and we help old ladies across the street 6 days out of the week, and then 1 day out of the week we do home invasion robberies and torture and murder people to death, is that a cool club? I would say that would be
a super extreme example, but I understand what you're trying to say.
No, I'm making an analogy because here's the deal: is like, yes, the U.S. occasionally does help some other countries. We could do that in a non-military fashion. Our National Guard is incredibly helpful when we're not sending them to Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine to murder people. Our National Guard has helped Americans. We could separate those two. Roles and keep one and medicine the other. And the reason for my analogy, Jason, is it doesn't matter how many people you help in Mississippi. If you are murdering people around the world, what you are doing is creating long-term enemies. Again, what we want to do is not just repeat jingoistic slogans. Look into what is happening and why, and ways we can go about fixing it. I know we're going overtime.
Yes.
That's it. If you want to send hate to St. Germain, it's teampleasant@gmail.com. You can tell me that you wish I would die and you have a voodoo doll of me. I love you. I support you. What I am looking to do is
the only doll I have of you is inflatable, and I get a lot of use out of it, big boy.
Whoa.
I'm just looking to spark conversation and intelligence and piss people off or inspire them enough that they go and read and educate themselves and bring some facts to the discussion so that I too can become smarter. We can have better discussions in the interest of peace.
I'm gonna tell you this much, that there definitely are a lot of bad people in the world that have very, very bad intentions for us, and we definitely need a military in regards to ward off from those types of threats. And at the same time too, we can't always focus on making the bad the enemy of the good. But nonetheless,